We have an excellent group tonight, and I knew it was going to be good. I just knew it was going to be huge, and it is. So I was asking for standing room only, and that's what we have, standing room only. And now I would like to present to you Jerry Frederickson.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mary Land. She's the coordinator of Move to Amend Southeast Wisconsin.
First, we're going to see this film made by Annie Leonard of Citizens United versus FEC. You don't have to remember all that. It'll show up. So I think this, can you see this here? This pretty much sums it up. How can politicians represent you when they're given millions of dollars to represent someone else? It's kind of that way, but actually it's almost the other way around. Most of the funds are spent to get people out of office, so most of our politicians are fighting this, and the people with money don't like it. Our Milwaukee County referendum is right here. We could just say only human beings have constitutional rights. That would be enough. But we clarified not corporations, but it also includes unions, it includes all artificial entities, all legal artificial entities that are living, breathing human beings. And money is not speech. Why do we need to get an amendment? That's the first question I ask, because that's too hard. I didn't want to do it, but here I am doing it. The Supreme Court could reverse their own decision. In order to change a Supreme Court decision, these are the three options. The Supreme Court has said that they will not reverse it, that they won't even consider it, because they had a Montana decision I think it was a year and a half ago, where they said, we aren't even going to consider you an exception to the rule, which is what Montana wanted. They said they were just too corrupt, and they needed campaign finance laws. And the Supreme Court said no, so they're not going to change it. And of course, the Supreme Court isn't going to change a lot for a long time, even if some of the older people die, some of the older judges, or retire, they'll be replaced by people of the same stripe. So the other one is that Congress can enact a law. You know how many laws the Do-Nothing Congress of years ago passed? Anybody know? It was like 250 laws. Do you know how many laws this one passed? 88. This is one problem, and one of the reasons is people are afraid to do anything. They're kind of paralyzed, and it's also very partisan and very angry. So Congress is not going to enact a law, and if they did, the Supreme Court would reverse it, because it would be against the law to enact any kind of campaign finance reform at this point. So we're left with amending the Constitution. So Move to Amend, basically what we want to do is say that money isn't speech. We want to restore the First Amendment to what it was originally meant to be. The word money was never in it. Here it is. You don't see the word money in it. It's all about religion, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, not freedom of spending, freedom of the press, right of the people to peaceably assemble, and petition the government for redress of grievances, which is exactly what we want to do. Also, the Supreme Court decided that money was speech. They decided that's what the founders really meant. And that's what we want to change. We don't want to change the Constitution, we want to change the Supreme Court decisions. So how did that change things for us? Look at, boom, 2012, look at the money that was spent. And this year, it's going to be worse. And 2016 is going to be horrendous. And you know you're paying for that, right? In your goods and services. Have you noticed a little inflation? It could have something to do with it. So the people on the left are 3.7 million people like us, small donors. And then that compares to 32 people on the right who are billionaires. So who's winning this money war here? We are not. And we never will. We never will. We're never going to have that much money. and they're writing the laws, so this is very difficult. So we also want to restore the original meaning of the Constitution because it was written for we the people. It was not written for corporations. The word corporation is not in there, so this is a real travesty of the Constitution to say that a corporation is a person and therefore has our Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was not written for any entity that is not in the Constitution. So the Supreme Court, not the founders, decided that a corporation is a person. With an amendment, we are not changing the Constitution, therefore we are reversing the Supreme Court rulings, which most Americans, I'll show you a poll, really disagree with. So what's so bad about big corporations having constitutional rights? This is not something that's talked about a lot. Even in the 6 other federal amendment proposals, most of them don't have anything about corporate personhood except for HGR 29, which is on your handout. So they refuse to disclose what's in their products. Like, we don't know if our products have GMO, genetically modified organisms in them. Most corn does, most soy does now, most wheat, and China won't even buy it from us. They can pollute our air and water while avoiding government inspections and avoid subpoenas because they have the 4th Amendment, gives their people. So they can ask for warrants. Well, what do they do while somebody's out getting their warrant? So they can come and examine whatever they need to examine. This is big companies do this, not little ones, because they have the money to do it. So they change things so it looks good. So they unlock the doors and the employees can go in and out the doors. Whatever they're doing that's illegal, they can fix. And those are the only people who would want a warrant, right? So they use it for that sometimes. They can freely advertise harmful products like these candy cigarettes that they're doing now, because they can sue. Legally, they can sue the community. If the community says, we don't want that in our community, they can sue for all future profits. Well, that's ad infinitum. Who can afford that? So that's the 5th Amendment. They use the 14th Amendment to be allowed to be in a community, a big box store, for instance. You don't want it next door to you. You don't want a pig farm downtown. And that actually happened in Montana, and they won. They had the pig farm down. So they used the civil rights laws and the 14th Amendment, which was supposed to protect the former slaves. So that's kind of awful. They also lately have decided that the employer's birth control opinion, that they didn't like birth control, is more important than the employees' religious rights. So that was interesting. And that was the McCutcheon decision, the Hobby Lobby thing, where they could deny their employees birth control based on their religious belief because they are a person. So here are the statistics. You can get a lot of polls on this. It's almost always around 70 or 80% of the general populace agrees that we want to overturn Citizens United, and that there should be limits on the amount of money corporations and other organizations can use to influence campaigns. So our strategy is to be local, to start local, which is what we're doing, and focus on local resolution campaigns, be really grassroots, and then do state lobbying, which we are doing now too, and push states to call on Congress to act. Here's our bill. You have this. You have a link in your handout for the state bill because it's pretty long, but basically it says, you see under 1, only human beings are endowed with constitutional rights, and money is not speech. And then they just kind of explain that a little further. So that's AGR 50, and then this is the national one, which I think is really good. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom is is going to be 100 years old next year. And they were the original Women's Peace Party. They have been studying corporate personhood for 20 years, and they have advised move to amend on that issue. So we understand it pretty well, and this was written with that in mind. So the first part is that natural persons only should have constitutional rights. It's not like businesses shouldn't have rights. They just shouldn't have those rights that are endowed by our Creator, as the Constitution says, because we're human. So they shouldn't have those, we don't think. So those rights should not be considered construed to be inherent or inalienable. They can have rights, but not those. And also it includes the fact that this particular amendment proposal by Mark Nolan of Minnesota and Mark Pocan of Madison, it says shall regulate. Most of the other proposals say may regulate. So you may not know that there are 7 national constitutional amendment proposals up for consideration. You might have heard, anybody hear about the Udall Amendment? No. That's too bad. That did come up in the Senate, but I guess it wasn't reported on much. So this one is good because it includes a candidate's own contributions and expenditures. It includes at the bottom, you see, publicly disclosed, so that's public disclosure of money, and that the judiciary shall not construe the spending of money to influence elections to be speech. So I think that's good. On your handout, you have these. You have the first 3. I didn't put down wimta.org, but that's a very good one. You'll find this map there of all the places in Wisconsin, the little red dots. If you go to that, that's Wisconsin Move to Amend. So they just do wimta.org. Then we also have Ready to Amend. Actually, all of these towns, villages, and cities, and some counties have passed this referendum. The lowest being, is it 61% here, right here? But several, like number 4, number 10, 11, look at those, 100%. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, they had 100% agreement. West Dallas was one that we did here nearby in 2012, April, and it was a Republican primary, and they got 70%. So this is a transpartisan issue. There are 16 states that have asked for a constitutional amendment so far, and we'd like to make Wisconsin number 17, and that's why we're doing all these referenda. So maybe our legislators will start to listen to us. So that's it for Move to Amend. It's pretty simple in a way, and it can get very complicated, but basically we're saying that corporations are not a person, and they aren't equivalent to you and me as individuals legally, and that money is not so much. So, thank you.